I was born in Jamaica in 1944. Ooh, that's many years ago. And I grew up in the countryside, in the mountains, in a place called Tiki Tiki. And the closest town to that is Christiana, that people most likely hear of. When I was growing up, we went to school, we didn't tell people we came from there because they would laugh at us and say to us, oh, it's bush, you know, Tiki Tiki's bush. So we used to tell people we come from a place called Coleyville, which is actually the post office. That's all our mail go to. That's the village that we tell people we come from. My father was a planter. My mom worked as the postmistress in Coleyville post office, and I was brought up with 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we're brought up on a farm. Never left the village itself. The first time I went to Kingston was when I was 16 years old, and I was on my way to England. That was the first time that I left my village. I was the youngest child of 5, and my 2 sisters were recruited as nurses from Jamaica to come to Brighton General to work as nurses. In 1957, my sister came. My other brother, who is 2 years older than me, Byron, he came and he joined the Royal Air Force, and he served for life, which is 22 years. And I myself came over and joined the RAF at 17 and a half. So I had 1.5 years in England before I joined the RAF, and during that 18 months or so I worked in a factory, I work as a plumber's mate, and I also work as a welder's mate, and joined the RAF and served for 5 years. I was a cook in the Royal Air Force, and one of the best jobs in the RAF, I thought it was. First of all, my elder brother had joined the RAF, so that was not what appealed to me. I would say was from Jamaica. We both were in the boys' brigade, so we both knew to march, and we both knew about uniform and discipline. So that was no hassle for us to join the RAF. I knew I had limited options ahead of me as a 16-year-old. I knew that because of the company I was keeping. I knew. And my brother used to come and visit me. I had to move to get out of that company I was keeping. So I joined the RAF. So I was really influenced by my brother. I lived with my eldest brother, who was over here. He met me at the airport, and lived with him for around 3 months, and then I got lodging, I got a job, and I got lodgings elsewhere. And this was in Shepherd's Bush, you know, so yeah, and my first job was in Goalhawk Road in Shepherd's Bush, and I worked in a brush factory, and my job was to make the tea and clean up. And I've never made tea before in my life. I never would drink the thing in Jamaica, never made tea, and that was my job. But it was pretty easy because they showed me how to do it, and all I had to do was follow those instructions. You know, heat the pot and put so many spoons of tea in it. In the end, they were saying, oh, nice cup of tea, you know, so there was some rewards to it. And cleaning up. And you've got to remember, in the 60s, as a Caribbean person, you would move where other Caribbean people live, and that was because of the situation of racism and teddy boys and various in Shepherd's Bush at that time. So we moved to Southall in Middlesex, which is just outside of Shepherd's Bush on the same road. So that's where we lived. But in that 18 months there was lots of fun as a youngster you had, because there was the time when teddy boys would be chasing you. And yes, I've had my fair share of running through alleyways and over people's fences to run away from teddy boys.
They're trying to put it across the country, starting in Britain, but we're not having it. That is why we give them a good hiding every time we meet them.
They take the mick out of their gear, like.
You actually knew where the teddy boys were, so you would avoid them. You would go around them. So we never used to get in problems. But if we're in a group of around 4 or 5 guys, we never bothered about going around. We used to go straight through, because they would never attack you if there was more than 2 or 3 of you itself. So you were pretty safe then. But for a comfort, it was easier for us to live in an area where there were other West Indians or other, like Asian Indians that lived in Southall, and Asians and Africans. Oh, it was definitely a culture shock. The first thing I came out the airport, you didn't see anything. You were so excited. The sounds, for instance, you hear, and the smells, and the sights you see. I came in August, so the weather was pretty warm and nice, so I didn't have problems with winter problems then. But getting on a double-decker bus for the first time in your life, it was one of the scariest things. I said to my brother, I said, no way I'm going upstairs, it might tip over. Because to me, it was like 2 buses running on top of each other, and I keep saying no. The train going on the underground as well was another, the different sounds you hear, the whistling sounds, and to me, coming from the mountains and going underground was sort of a new world. I just couldn't understand how they could dig this far underground, and I was totally flabbergasted about it all. And none of that. What amazes me was when I came out, and don't forget, I come from Jamaica, where this majority, all the people where I came from is black or mixed race, maybe 1 or 2 mixed races, not many of them. So you're looking always at black people, and you come and all you see all these white people. And believe it or not, they all look alike. I couldn't tell the difference between one or the other, and you know. And none of that, they didn't understand the word that I was saying. I had no idea what I was saying. And all they would say to me was, pardon, pardon. And in the end, I just felt I had to change my accent. I had to change the way I talk, or should I talk more? But they still couldn't understand me. So in the end, I just gave up, and you have to take me as I am, you know. But I found, besides a couple of teddy boys and everything, everybody was wonderful. All the guys were friendly. All the white guys were friendly. When I went to work, they was really nice to me. It wasn't the same as I was when I first came and had to shift away from teddy boys. I worked in a factory, and it was totally different. Would go out and things. I wouldn't go to the pictures or anything. I wasn't used to going to the cinema. I've never left my village to, you know, I've never seen a television. I remember the night I came in and I was sleeping in the same bed as my brother. And I remember my brother saying to me, you know, we're talking, and he said to me, blow out the light. You know, I mean, if he had said to me, switch off the lights, I would have no idea what he meant. You know, we use candles, so we use blow lamps or something, so you always have to blow the light out. And it's exactly the same language you speak, and there's electricity, you know. So, love the place. I love the place because, to me, I felt when I came here was freedom. I was, you know, no more mom. The last day I left Jamaica, I should say, I remember carrying water for my dad to have tea before I came to England, and that always stick in my mind because we had tanks for the catchment of the water, but it was a bit of a drought period. So he would save the water from the tank for himself and the animals that he has to use. And then we'd have to carry the fresh water from the spring to cook, and because we use the tank water to cook, the spring water. So I remember all those things, and washing in cold water in the mornings and everything. Yeah. I was very excited when I came to England. I was very, very excited, and even when I look up and the skies were blue and everything was exactly the same that in the country that I came from, beside the houses. It was very strange to see houses close up together. They have houses close up together in Jamaica, but I didn't see those till I went to Kingston for the first time. You know, and coming to England and see all the houses joined together was something, and the street had lights and everything. But one thing, when I came here and I was living in Shepherd's Bush, the houses that we lived in Shepherd's Bush didn't have a bath inside the toilet, inside the house, and it didn't have an inside toilet neither. It was outside, and it was like a little lean-to extension outside the house. And I remember the bath was sort of a sink, made of zinc, and two handles on it, and it was hung on the wall and a nail, and you had to remove it, take it indoors. You'd boil kettles and you would pour it in, and then that didn't bother me because I was used to that, washing in a bucket with a cup of water over your head and you wash your hair. And so that didn't bother me at all. But the toilets in the summer was okay, but in the winter it was bitter cold. So I remember my first experience of the cold, and the nails and the toenails and the fingernails used to hurt with the cold. And 60 years on, they still hurt when it gets cold.
And when the steps and the pavement and the front path and the backyard were all clear, there was still the roof. All over Britain, the streets rang to the sound of shovels.
I've been always brought up to believe that if somebody calls your name and you don't like it, you should tell that person that. You should, because he has told us, if you don't, their friends will call you that as well. So you've always had to put a stop to it all in that respect. So when it comes to racism, most of it you would ignore. You cannot take it on. You can't take it all on. But some of them, when you have to put your foot down. And when you're young guys together in the RF and somebody call you a name that you're not pleased with, see, you got to be confident enough to be able to attack that guy. You know, you've got to have your position in your group, so you have to say something. So you deal with it in your own way. You deal with it. I was posted to Bridgenorth near Wolverhampton, and that's your training camp, and you'll be there for around, I think it was around 6 weeks. You'll be there doing basic training, marching up and down and things like that. And there weren't many black boys there at that time. At that time there wasn't. But where there were, when you go on a camp, you tend to stick together. And I was a cook in the RF, so you were treated differently somehow, and you knew you were treated differently. Because people would say thank you, and they had you know, you looking after the food. They want extra, they'll smile to you or whatever it is. So you knew your position, so you can take it for your own advantage. But all the black guys, I was on one camp in Germany, and all the black guys would sit on one table. Or the first black guy would come in and he'd sit on the table, when no other white guy would go and sit next to him and stuff like that. Unless it was a friend of his. Unless there was a friend of his that would go and sit in. But you tend to find out that one black guy, all the black guys would sit in. And the officer commanded, well, the catering manager at that time didn't like the ideas of all the guys sitting on one table, and they tried to tell them to sit elsewhere. But they said, well, you'd have to tell other people to sit elsewhere, not just them. So, you know, you could argue with things. I think other guys would complain as well. Other guys would complain that, oh, they're all sitting together, you know. And there was no problem when it came to cricket, because all the West Indian boys enjoy the game of cricket, and this was our social activity, you know, together, you know. We'd throw ball at each other, or we'd go into the gym, we'd practice or something like that. Cricket in the RF really wasn't much for the men, it was mainly for the officers. If you do get a game, say for instance, if you get a game with the officers, you end up as 12 man or something like that. Unless you're a really excellent cricketer, and even if you're much better than they are, they still get in itself. And that's how the game played. But the West Indian guys, I mean, we loved their cricket, you know. I mean, English guys like their football, and the American like their baseball. We like our cricket. So every chance we get, we'll go out, and 3 or 4 or 5 of you go out and you mess around in the green or in the gym with the ball and everything. So it sort of brought us together really, and was something to do. So when the weather gets good, you'll find on most, not just West Indian, most of the black guys will go down the gym and pass the time in the gym, or go running. Some goes running, you know. And we had people from Chinese, from Vietnam, from Hong Kong that was in the RAF, and they enjoyed the judo and the, you know, various sports. So you had an opportunity to play different sports as well. So yeah, cricket was just part of the element, but it brought us all together really. For me personally, being in the kitchen, I couldn't have been treated any different, you know. They couldn't have said you got to do the spuds all the time, or you got, you know, you were on a rota system, so it was. I felt I was treated fairly. You get the odd situation, for instance, in the 60s they had the Robinson jam with the gollywog on it. Now that was a pain in the butt for us. It was a pain in the butt for us, because what the guys used to do, they would peel off the gollywog off the jar, and they'll go to you, on your back, hello Bert, hello, you know, and stick it all over your back, and so you get that. But in the end, you know who do it, so you can go and challenge them and threaten them, or warn them, you know, or sometimes you can do exactly the same back to them, you know, just yeah, you know, you can get your own back. So as youngsters, you devise ways, because you got to work with these guys, and don't forget, they've got to watch your back as well as you watching their back, because that's how you're brought up. But a guy could be racist to you, right outside racist to you, but yet still he might ask you for a drink, you know, to the pub. He totally forget that he was racist to you.
Interesting.
Yeah, they just come out with stuff. So you gotta be tolerant as well to survive. It's a survival game. Otherwise you'll be fighting all your life, really, wouldn't you? I had a wonderful experience. I couldn't really complain about much in the RAF, to tell the truth. It's either I was dumb and didn't notice, but you have to survive for that 5 years. You have to keep your nose clean because you cannot beat them, you know. So you know your place, so you just do your time, and you get a different obstruction, like maybe not wearing a hat, and the officer might shout at you and charge you, or something like that, or you might get drunk and disorderly, and you might get 7 days restriction of privileges. But that goes with the RF, you know, and I would imagine it goes with most of the armed forces, really, where it's not easy to keep all these young boys in line, you know. I mean, we all comes from different part of the world, different part of the country. There was people from Newcastle, people from Southampton, there were people from Cornwall, Ireland, Scotland. Some of the accents you've never heard before, some of the saying you hear, you know, because people from different part of the country have different saying. People in Yorkshire says this, people in Lancashire says this, people from Yorkshire don't like people from Lancashire, people from London don't like people from this place, you know. So it's always sort of a competition out there, you know. So really, somehow you've got to find, you can't be alone. You just cannot be alone. You know, it's a team thing somehow. I wanted to get married because I had a girlfriend, you know. One of my sisters introduced me to my wife in 1963, and I'm still with her today, so I feel quite proud about that. So I was pleased to leave, and I want to grow my hair long, because afros in style, and I just wanted, you know,
Great.
Didn't do it. I did it and cut it and end up the same as if I was in the RAF, you know. Before I left the RAF, they give you a choice that if you want another trade when he goes out into civilian. So I was a cook, you know, and then you can remuster, they call it, and I went to do welding because I was a welding assistant before. It's not a welder's mate, so I knew a little bit about welding. So I went and did a course, and I did a course, nearly 3 months course in Aldershot, doing welding, CO2 welding, oxygen acetylene welding, and I came after I left the RAF. I left the RAF and I lived in London. I was at Oxbridge, and I got a flat in Southall where I was living before, the same town. And my wife is Guyanese, she's Indian as well, so she's Indian. So I lived there, and my sister got me a place in Brighton. And that's where I moved to Brighton in 1967, and I've been here since.